Okay, so I'll begin the presentation now, hoping more people will join. But thank you all for joining me this evening for this presentation. And I would really like to thank Education USA for asking me to put this presentation on for you all, and as well as our host, Liz. Thank you so much. So I would just like to introduce myself quickly. My name is Briana Suarez, and I am the International Admissions and Operations Manager here at the Association of Professional Schools of International Affairs. And just to give you a little background on APSIA, because that title is very long, the APSIA is a consortium of the leading international and domestic universities that specialize in international affairs and public policy around the world. So currently we have 37 members and 38 affiliates, with 10 to 15% of our schools being international schools, meaning that they are mainly in Europe or Asia, with a couple elsewhere. So, and you can find the full list on our website at APSIA, APSIA.org. You can also find a full list of the programs that they offer for graduate school, application tips, and whatnot. So just a little quick introduction to the presentation. In this presentation, I'm going to be going over the best practices in applying to graduate school, as well as building competency in undergraduate to then apply to graduate school, and what can you do with an international affairs graduate degree for your professional and career moving forward. And if you all have questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. I will be more than happy to answer them. Usually I give a little time after my presentation for questions, but if something pops up as I go through the presentation, feel free to put it in the chat box and I'll try to address it as quickly as I can. So with that, I'm going to start my presentation. So during undergraduate, your undergraduate degree, many students don't know what major to start with. So what we have students talk about usually when they are trying to figure out what to major in, specifically in international affairs, is first learning to channel your interests. And many students that end up in international affairs realm typically say that they like these topics. So the first being travel, culture, and language. These are students that really like to go abroad and experience new things, are very curious, and like to build language proficiency. Another topic students tend to be very interested in is tackling big problems. So poverty, environment, disease. Students also like politics and government or like to debate and argue. Some students we have usually say that they have a call to service and helping people. Many of these students tend to focus on human rights, human trafficking, and usually like to teach abroad and so forth. And then another topic would be desire to see social change, excuse me. And this is really where students tend to volunteer, study abroad again, and want to, again, see social change in their country, whether it is federally or internationally. Now, this is just a very quick list of topics that students tend to be really passionate about in the international relations realm, especially in their undergraduate degrees. But this doesn't necessarily mean that these are the only things that you can be interested in. What this part of the presentation is really just trying to say is that you want to make sure that you're taking something you're passionate about and channeling that interest into something specific. And an undergraduate degree in international affairs can really help channel interests like this into a global context and your degree moving forward. So there are, again, a variety of topics that can be channeled through international affairs, and most of the interests that students have, whether they're on this list or not, can really be explored through a global lens in international affairs degrees. So what can you do while you're an undergraduate to build your competitiveness for graduate school, especially if you are looking for an international affairs degree, both in your undergraduate and graduate degree. Now, I would like to say preemptively that if you're applying to graduate school for an international affairs degree, you do not necessarily have to have an undergrad in international affairs. However, these are certain skills that an international affairs degree in your undergraduate career can really help build without you necessarily noticing. So it helps to build that foundation that you can tap into for your graduate degree application and your professional career moving forward. But again, don't be dissuaded to study something else if you don't feel that in your undergraduate degree that's kind of what you want to lean into. But the first is really building your professional experience. International experience is even more sought after by graduate schools. And professional experience can really mean anything from teaching abroad, working with the federal government, interning with an embassy, all the way to working at the local pet store or being a barista. What we say by professional experience is just taking some time to work elsewhere that isn't just in academically, and it really is how you are able to spin it in your applications. So that's one way that your undergraduate degree can really help you do that. During your undergraduate degree, you can also learn to write well, speak comfortably, and language proficiency. Most graduate schools are looking for students that are able to have all three of these. This is meaning to say that you may have the knowledge of a specific topic and be the most knowledgeable person in that realm, but if you are unable to write well and speak comfortably to a different audience, then that makes that knowledge kind of null and void. So in an undergraduate international affairs degree, this is something that is usually very much stressed. Many schools do ask that you take a language to fulfill your undergraduate degree. So pursuing an international affairs degree builds that foundation. Next, schools are looking for students that have analytical and quant skills. Something that isn't noted here is also technical skills, and this can range from knowledge on social media, math skills, being able to learn analytically, speak and understand problems from an analytical standpoint, And again, this is something that is really stressed in your undergraduate international affairs degree, but again, not necessarily the route you need to take if you're looking for graduate school in the international affairs realm. Next is understanding project management, and this is the idea of leveraging your skills to coordinate, organize, prioritize, and delegate, and working with a team structure. And a lot of international affairs programs are able to provide this through their courses. This isn't necessarily saying that you need to be super qualified in this realm, but you should have some idea of what it takes to initiate, plan, launch, oversee programs, as well as working in a team. Also, you should just learn how the world comes together and things come together in this end. And then lastly, it's building a network. And many students often state that they don't have a network because they're an undergraduate, and they feel that the only network that they would have is professional. Well, this isn't true. A lot of students have a network, they just haven't tapped into it. So your network can be your supervisors at a specific internship, peers. So this meaning students that are attending the same undergraduate that you have attended or are attending, professors that you've had in the past or worked with, and alumni, so students that have graduated from the same school that you have. These are all people that would be in your network. It's really about tapping into those resources and building those relationships. I always like to stress that you never know who will know somebody else at a job interview, so you want to make sure that you are building those relationships and just keeping them in your loop. So where can a student build this competency prior to applying to graduate school? And if you can do this through internships or work study. Many students are not able to secure an internship in their first year of undergraduate, but they are very much qualified by their second year. So we really we stress that students look into these options. Your coursework or publications, a lot of students tend to run publications in their undergraduate career, and this is a good way to build the skills of learning how to write, learning how to speak well, writing memos, being that person that is giving the presentation for your course or for your organization. Studying abroad and fellowships is another way to build this competency. Students that study abroad are much more competitive just because it shows that you're interested in new things and exploring new perspectives. So most schools like to see that students have studied abroad, but again, it isn't a necessity. You can also do Peace Corps, AmeriCorps for those that are in the U.S., and volunteering as well. Schools really like to see that students are involved in some way. And lastly, young professional groups and with your professors and alumni, working closely in that end and just participating in organizations that you're passionate about and working with people you are also finding a common ground with, or those that you haven't found a common ground with, I would also say. So now that I've quickly gone over the undergraduate aspect of it and how to build competency during your undergraduate, I would like to now start talking a little bit about your graduate degree. So we usually have a timeline of when to apply, so to help students kind of understand the process and give them enough time to build the best application that represents them. And with that, we usually recommend that you start your application, 12 months prior to when you want to enroll. So this would mean that if you would like to enroll for the fall 2020 incoming class, you would begin your research in fall 2019. And one thing that I would like to preface this presentation with prior is that graduate school is a track for many students, and it's a question I get is, when is the right time to go to graduate school? And that is a personal question that students have to really ask themselves. We suggest that you take a year at least some time after your undergraduate degree, just so that you can build the competencies in your professional realm as well, and that can help you discern whether you should be applying to graduate school or not. With that said, when you do decide to apply to graduate school, at the 12-month mark, so a year out, this is where you're beginning to determine which programs you wish to pursue. We recommend that you cast a wide net at this point and really look into various programs and not to limit yourself just to the schools that you know of. Please do your research, because there are many, many programs out there that may be the best one for you. So you're researching the graduate schools. We also suggest creating a spreadsheet to track your deadlines. I found it personally very helpful during my application to use an Excel spreadsheet to track these deadlines, but feel free to use whichever method you find best for you to track and plan. You're also understanding your financial situation, and this is something that really can't wait, just because you would be setting up yourself to be in a really bad position. You want to make sure that you understand what it costs to not just afford to pay tuition, but affording living expenses. Are you going part-time or full-time? Transportation, and so forth. And investigating financial aid options as well. Many schools will have financial aid deadlines prior to your application, so make sure that you're tracking those and keeping up with them. So how do you find the right program for you? Here are a couple of questions that we recommend you ask yourself when you're applying to a graduate school degree program. The first being, what will you study? And this is really alluding to the academic structure of the program. Are you a student who prefers a flexible program where you can combine different concentrations or make one up your own? Or do you prefer a rigid program, something that requires you to take certain prerequisites and you can't really deviate from it? Do you like to take night school classes? Or do you prefer classes in the morning? You want to make sure that you are looking for a program that will deliver to your needs as best as it can, and that you like that academic structure. Second, are you qualified? So this is speaking to the admissions criteria for that school. Most schools publish average numbers yearly for their incoming class, and they list the prerequisite, foreign language, work experience, and whatnot on average for the students that they're admitting. So make sure you take a look at this to give you a better sense of where you fall on the spectrum. This doesn't mean necessarily that you can't apply to a school that you feel is a reach or that you feel you may not be super qualified for, but it just gives you a better understanding of what the average student looks like and where you can really build the weaknesses in your application. Third, and this is an important question that I feel a lot of students tend to forget, is do you like being there? So the living environment. So many graduate school degree programs are 2 years. So you want to make sure that you enjoy being at that location. Most schools now have virtual tours on their websites. So if you're unable to physically go to the location to visit, go ahead and do a virtual tour. It really helps. Also, if you think about if you like living in a suburban area, rural area, a city, that can help you narrow down programs. Can you afford it? Again, your financial situation. You have to understand your personal comfort level with debt and how comfortable you feel taking out loans, whether you would need a substantial financial aid package to attend, questions like this. And then lastly, which is a very important one as well, is what's next. So the professional fit. So where are you headed after you've gained this graduate degree program? If you don't have an idea, which is completely okay, you don't need to know exactly what you're going to be doing as soon as you graduate. You should have some sort of notion, but feel free to ask professors, your supervisors, and we give a tip of looking at your ideal job description. So if the job that you really want requires a master's degree with 2 years of work experience in the field and language skills in Mandarin, well, then that really helps to narrow down programs you're looking into. You would look for a program that allows you to work out in the field and maybe provides Mandarin language courses. So with that, when you're preparing at the 9-month mark, you're now starting to seek out schools admission counselors to understand the priorities of the admissions committee. Feel free to ask specifically what the priorities of the admissions committee is. It shows that you've been doing your research and you are very invested in the process. And it also allows you to figure out things that you may want to highlight in your application, as well as those that you may be missing. This goes directly into completing the prerequisite skills and courses that you would need for graduate school, identifying the weaknesses in your applications, as well as taking any standardized tests. Many schools now have made the GREs or the GMAT or TOEFL, well, specifically I would say actually just the GRE optional, but make sure that you know which schools are asking for what. If you need to take the TOEFL test, make sure you're taking it at least 9 months out, just so that you have time to retake it if need be. And you're also beginning to gather application materials at this time. So when you're preparing to apply, this is really not a full list of the things, but this is usually what most schools will ask for. I can't stress enough that most schools will vary in what they ask for, but this is generally what they will ask. So they will ask for an application form, which can now be done online, application fee. Many schools do or offer application fee waivers, so make sure you're looking into that to save yourself a couple of bucks. A CV or a resume, those two are different, so please know what the school is asking for, and do not submit a resume if the school is asking for a CV and vice versa. Official transcripts from each institution, and this is really for those that have studied abroad and you've matriculated into another institution. Make sure you're asking for the official transcripts from that institution as well. Standardized test scores like the GRE, the GMAT, personal statement and or topical essays, 2 to 3 letters of recommendations, and bank statements for financial aid. This is really for students that are interested in studying in the United States, or for those, again, that are applying to financial aid. They will need to see your bank statements. So at the 3 to 6 month mark, this is where you're starting to finalize your desired list of programs. You obviously would not be applying to 10 or 15 schools, so this is really where you're narrowing down the list to those that you really want to go to and want to attend after doing your research. You're now reaching out to potential recommenders. One note on this is please make sure that your recommenders is someone that knows you best, not necessarily someone that has the best title. If you reach out to someone that doesn't know you very well but you think has the great title, they will most likely write a very generic recommendation for you and will be unable to speak to your skills and those skill sets that you've built throughout your undergraduate and professional career. So make sure you're reaching out to someone that knows you best and can really write a compelling recommendation and highlight those things that you want the admissions committee to learn about you. At the same time, this is where you are compiling application materials for your schools. You're updating your resume. I would suggest you update your resume just in general, not just because you're applying to graduate school. This should be done professionally throughout your professional career, You're requesting transcripts from all institutions that you've attended, writing your essays and personal statements, and so forth. This, again, really helps in the process because you don't want to be caught off guard at the 1 month mark, so a month before the application is due, and realize you haven't requested any of the transcripts, and the transcript require a 2 to 3 month process. So make sure that you're doing that with anticipated time. You're also applying to outside scholarships, which I will go over a little bit in a bit. You're retaking any standardized tests if needed. The 3 to 6 month mark allows you to do so and still submit them by the time that your application will be due. And you're checking in with recommenders. We say this because students forget that recommenders have a full-time job. That doesn't necessarily mean just writing recommendations. So make sure that you're checking in with them and feel free to prompt them. So this meaning you let them know things that you've worked on in the past with them, reminding them of the good job you've done, things that you think they can really say in their recommendation about your skills and whatnot. So feel free to give them prompts. That usually will help a recommender. So one of the questions that I get from students often is, how do I write a compelling essay, a personal statement? Whether you are just coming out of undergraduate or you are a professional that's been working in the field for more than 5 years, there's a pretty easy way to kind of structure your essay or personal statements to explain your journey and why you would be applying to graduate school at this point. And the way that I like to separate this is by going through the where have you been, where are you now, and where are you going. So this is really to give the admissions representatives an idea of who you are. They remember that they will have your CV or resume and your transcripts on hand, so they will know those basic points of where you've worked, what you've done in your undergraduate coursework, and whatnot. But you want to give a compelling read and show another side the committee may not know. So the first being, where have you been? So this is where you're outlining your qualifications. So your work and volunteer experiences, life experiences, coursework, projects, and languages. This is really where you're elaborating on these points of what has led you to the point that you are now. being the conveying your passion. So what is it about you now that is sparking you to apply to graduate school? What do you want to study? Why does this topic excite you? And what motivates you to apply to graduate school now? Not 2 years ago, not 2 years from now, but what is it about your past experiences that have really fueled this passion that you're speaking of, that you want to now go into graduate school and explore that passion and build on these competencies that we've spoken on in the past? And then the third part being, where are you going? So this goes back to the point I made a little earlier of your professional fit. Where are you headed after you've attained your graduate degree? So why this school? Why this program? What will you do with the degree once you have it? You want to elaborate as to why this program and this degree are going to be the springboard to who you want to be down in your professional career. You want to make the admissions committee understand that this program is pivotal to your formulation professionally, and that without this program, you're unable to get there. So if you really stick to those 3 points, again, where have you been? So outlining your qualifications. Where are you now? Conveying your passion. And where are you headed? Explaining your goals really helps to outline your essay and personal statement and give the committee something compelling to read. So at the 1 month mark is where you're finalizing all of your applications for admissions, finalizing scholarships and financial aid. Again, many schools will have different deadlines for scholarships or financial aid aside from their deadline to apply. So make sure you are tracking these. Checking in with recommenders, updating your financial plan, as things might have changed from the first time that you started applying, and submitting all of the requested materials. The 1 month mark is really the culmination of all of the planning and preparation you've been doing, and you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. Not submitting one thing may really put you at a disadvantage. So with that, what are the mistakes? And I would actually say this in general, not just for graduate school. I would say this for both undergraduate and graduate school. First, be just failing to follow instructions. You're getting it information, no more or no less. So if a school is asking for 2 recommendations, 3, not provide 1, provided that school has asked for. Ask for extra copies of external documents in case something goes awry and one of those documents gets lost in the mail. Then you have one on hand to submit quickly and not delay your application. Request scripts and recommendations early. So failing to follow instructions is a very easy one to avoid. Just read the instructions and follow them to the T. The second being making foolish mistakes. Make sure you're reading your essays and statements several times, and ask a second party to proofread them as well. You want to make sure that you're not making a mistake in your essay. For example, one mistake that is commonly made is when students apply to schools that have similar names. For example, if you would be applying to a school in the United States like Georgia Tech and George Washington University, make sure you're sending the correct essay to the correct school. So if you make your case for why you want to go to George Washington and send it to Georgia Tech, I can say with confidence that Georgia Tech will probably not admit you because of that. So make sure that you are just avoiding these little mistakes that can be picked up. And then the third, which is a much more difficult mistake to avoid but can be done, is just not conducting an honest self-assessment of your skills, experiences, and interests. You want to make sure that you're honest with yourself, and that if there are any hiccups in your application, you disclose them forwardly. If you are unsure as to what is oversharing or not stating enough or apologizing, feel free to contact the school, so the admissions counselors, and ask how is it best discuss these issues and gaps. At the same time, while you're addressing those issues, make sure that you are showing how you've grown from them and how you've become a better applicant both professionally and academically because of it. So after the deadline, this is where you've submitted everything. Sadly, your work is not done. You're confirming all of your materials for admission and scholarships have been received. You're also thanking all of the recommenders. They've taken time out of their day, their lives, their work to write you a recommendation. So make sure you're staying on top and just thanking them, just being polite. That's just a pro tip for both academic and professional careers. You want to keep your network intact, be as nice as you can. Updating your financial plan throughout, because again, things may change even after you've applied, and making sure that you're continuing to learn about programs to discern between those that you feel are the best for you after you've been accepted. So this is where you're attending any events that the school might be offering. Many schools will let you sit in on a class. You can speak with alumni that have graduated from the program, speak to current students. New fellowships come up during the time that between application and admission and you accepting admission. So make sure you're keeping up with that. So what do schools look for in an applicant when you are applying to graduate school? So the first two are your aptitude for study and your chance for success in the program. At the end of the day, this is a school that you're applying to. So the admissions committee wants to make sure that you are able to succeed in this program, as well as having a clear sense of professional direction. They want to make sure that they are setting you up to succeed professionally after the program. So they want to make sure that's why they're reading your resume. That's why they're going to be looking at your transcript to see kind of where you might be headed and how this program fits into that professional direction. And then lastly, they're looking for experiences and perspectives that will help others succeed. So while you're very concerned about your own application, the admissions committee is looking at the incoming class holistically. They want to build a class that not only is stacked in its deck with multiple experiences and people from different spectrums of life. They want to make sure that the students that are being admitted are people that can help others succeed in the program as well. So this is why they're looking at your past experiences, your professional experiences, to see what perspectives you might bring to someone that may not have that same experience. So these are just the general 4 things, very broad, obviously, but this is really what they're looking for in an applicant. And again, everyone, feel free if you have questions, put it in the chat box. More than happy to answer anything as I'm going through this, especially if I've said something that can be a little confusing or you want me to elaborate a little bit on. Feel free. With that said, now we're getting to the point of how do you pay for school? Graduate degree can be very expensive, as many students know, but there are ways to offset the cost. One note that I like to make is that you have to understand graduate school as a long-term investment in yourself. So while it is very costly, at the end of the day, it will pay off for your professional and career moving forward. So make sure that you have that mentality when you are applying to graduate school. So how would you pay for graduate school? The first option is merit and need-based aid. These are 2 different things, so make sure you understand the difference. And schools may offer one, they may offer the other, they may offer both, or they may offer none. Make sure you're looking into your options at that school when you're applying for financial aid. The second being research and teaching assistant positions. This is when you're given a stipend to pay for tuition, and in return, you're doing exactly what the title states. You're either doing research or being a teaching assistant for a professor at that university. And then there's also assistance provided by the central university within the school that you're applying to. When you're applying to graduate school, you're usually applying to a school within the larger university. So there may be funds within the larger university to pay for your graduate school degree. So make sure you're asking. feel free to ask the admissions counselors if there are any funds available. The worst that someone can say is no, so you really don't lose anything by asking. And while the first three that I've just mentioned are internal-based options within the graduate school that you're applying to, there are also external sources for funding, which are grants, loans, and scholarships. Please know the difference between grants and loans. Grants, you don't have to pay back. Loans, you do have to pay back. And scholarships. I know Education USA does a really good job at outlining some of the scholarships that are available to students, so feel free to look through their website. As well as our website, we list a lot of fellowships and scholarships available to students. So you can go on our website and look through that. And here are some examples of types of scholarships and fellowships that are out there. Please don't be dissuaded by how short this list is. It really is a very, very short list of scholarships available to students. So one way to pay for graduate school is by looking at fellowships that pay based on your career interests, being the Pickering Fellowship, the Wrangell or Payne Fellowship. These are some fellowships that will pay for your graduate school degree if you're interested in joining the State Department or the U.S. Agency for International Development. So there are many fellowships based on what your interests are for your career. There are other types of fellowships if you're interested, if you're a returned Peace Corps volunteer. So the Paul D. Coverdell Fellows Program has a stipend for students if you're a returned Peace Corps volunteer. There are fellowships and scholarships depending on your citizenship. So where you live. There are scholarships depending on your geographic location. So, for example, if you are a member of the OAS, of an OAS member state, you can apply to their scholarship. If you're a citizen, for example, Estonia, Latvian, Lithuania, or you have family that is from there, you can apply to Baltic American Foundation scholarships. There are scholarships for students that are typically underrepresented in public service, like the Public Policy and International Affairs program. Really, this is a very, very short list, but this is a good way to get you to start thinking of different ways to look at scholarships. Again, looking at scholarships that go through your career option, your citizenship, where you live, your ethnicity, things like that. You can look and do the research, and I can assure you there's a fellowship or scholarship for everybody. And also, one last thing on this that I'd like to note is don't be dissuaded by the small scholarships you may receive. So those being a $50 scholarship, a $100 scholarship or so. They can still help pay for your application, as many graduate schools still charge to apply. So don't think that because it's a small amount, it doesn't count for anything. Make sure that you are still applying to those, because applying to graduate school in itself can be expensive. So one last note before I open it up to questions that I like to spend a little time on is just career options. Many students have this notion that international affairs is a one-track field and that the only paths open to you career-wise with an international affairs degree is just public diplomacy or security and intelligence, which is incorrect. International affairs is really an interdisciplinary field that can really prepare you for a variety of career paths. And again, this goes back to my earlier slide on learning to channel your interests. So about 44% of APSIA graduate students go on to work in the private sector. So this meaning that they'll go to work for businesses, they'll work in human rights and law, maybe education, communications, and public relations. This being said, that international affairs as an option, as a realm of work, is very broad, and it's really just learning how to channel your skills, your interests into it. Again, as I stated earlier, most of your interests or things that you've studied can really be channeled through a global, or looked at on a global scale, We are in an age where we're all interconnected and everything has a global aspect to it. So an international affairs degree can take you into finance. Some students study space policy with international affairs. Some do marketing for big firms because they have a global understanding of how things work. There are many different career options, and I would recommend you all to look at our international career guide on our website to look at paths that you may choose once you've graduated with an international affairs graduate degree that don't necessarily have to fit the standard mold of public policy and foreign service, public diplomacy, and whatnot. So feel free to take a look at that. If you have any questions, as well as ask, we can talk a little bit more about your interests in depth if you are interested in that. And with that, I'm coming to the conclusion of my presentation. Here are some links that you can use when doing research for graduate schools. We have our events page, page, on our website where you can see what events we have coming up, such as graduate school fairs, workshops. Many of our schools list online office hours or presentations that they have going on throughout the year. Take a look at that. We are currently finalizing our travel for our graduate school fairs this year, so we will be abroad. Still not sure exactly where, but once we do, we will update the events page. Looking at the fellowships and scholarships page, in case you have any asking questions as to what scholarships are out there for you when you're applying to graduate school, what programs are out there. So we list all the graduate school programs with our APSEA schools, and the International Career Guide if you have a question on what you can do with both an undergraduate and graduate school degree. And sorry about that. And also, I suggest you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. We post various options, I would say almost every hour or close to, on Twitter especially, for fellowships, work opportunities internationally, internships internationally, not just based in the U.S. I know we just posted a couple of job openings in Rwanda, so feel free to follow us on all of these. You can email our executive director, which is Carmen Mazzara, carmen@apsia.org, or email me if you have questions specifically at Briana, BRIANA, at apsia.org. So with that, I would like to open it up to all of you if you have any questions, both for undergraduate or graduate degrees. My experience in both, I'm here to answer any questions if any of you have any.
Hey, Briana. So we have a couple of people in the center watching the webinar, and they've got a couple of questions here. I guess it's going to be easier if they just spell it out without typing it up. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that works.
You want to just answer? No, whatever.
The question is about the scoring system for the graduate student. So if you're applying for a master's or PhD degree, what is the weight of like a essay component, the test component, and how the admission team manage the scoring? Does the schools have some scoring system for the application? And then who makes the final decision? How it works? How they choose the best student for them?
Okay, I think I've missed the first part of the question.
So the first part of the question was whether or not there are any weighted scores, for example, that could guide admission decision in terms of how much weight is given to GPA versus essay and stuff like that.
Okay, yes. So weighted question, as well as how does the application process work? Correct? So how does the admissions how do they look at applications?
Yeah,
Okay.
so how weighting and evaluation of applications, especially.
Yes. So each school has its own weights that they give to a GPA or your test scores. I wouldn't get too hung up on that. As I said previously, look at averages that the school posts so you can understand what the average student looks like in the GPA and their GREs. We just finished our analysis for the fall 2018 incoming class, and they should be publishing their scores shortly. So, for example, the average age of a student applying to graduate school is about 26 currently in the US. Well, in APSEA schools, excuse me. But each school will post their own scores so you can kind of understand where you fall on the spectrum. If you feel that your scores or your GPA aren't as strong as they should be, feel free to compensate for that with your professional skills or explaining why those aren't as strong, how you've learned from it, and moving forward, how you are going to better get yourself becoming a better applicant, if that makes any sense. So again, just disclosing those gaps that you feel you may have. But again, with the test scores, if you start early enough, you can take the tests more than once if you feel that your test scores aren't as high as you'd like them to be. With that being said, students are admitted with lower averages than the average, with higher test scores than the average. So it's really building your application to be a holistic application, not just a strong GPA, not just a strong test score, but what about your professional experience are you bringing to the table? What about your interests? What is it that is motivating you in this realm? And how do you feel going forward you would be the best applicant coming out of this school, if that makes any sense? For the second part of your question, how does the application process work? So once you've submitted all of your applications by the deadline, some schools will have deadlines with fellowships and financial aid combined with your application. So that application for financial aid goes to the financial aid office, and your application for admissions goes to the admissions committee. The admissions committee reads each application, I believe at least twice. Different people read it. So one person will read your application, then another will read your application. Each school has a different process really, but the general process is that you'll get a score, and they'll try to see how you fit in to all of those aspects. So what is your GPA? What is your GRE score? How good is your personal statement? How well you would fit in to that school, what you would gain from that school, and how eventually would you be giving back to that school. So meaning, what are you learning from this school moving forward professionally? So you usually go through a couple of rounds of that. So again, multiple people read your application, and then they kind of make their decision based on that, on everything combined together and how strong they feel you would be to succeed in this program. And then you are given a decision of whether you've been admitted or not. If you're not admitted the first time, I suggest that you can apply again if this is really a dream school of yours and you can't see yourself at another school. But most students, I would say, end up at the school that best fits them. So I hope that answered that question. My answer was very broad. Oh, hello?
Yes, thank you so much. We did have another question from the group here.
I have a question. Oh, I was going to address the question in the chat.
Okay, we can do that and then we'll get back to this one. So if you don't mind,
Yes.
just waiting for a bit.
Yeah, well, just this question I can answer pretty quickly. What source of funding is the most common for Ukrainians? That's a difficult question just because it's very specific. I would suggest looking at, it depends what institution you're applying to. Because if it's a US-based institution, it would probably be some sort of loan or a scholarship from a specific external scholarship. I would look at Education USA provides some lists correct, if I'm...
So generally speaking, for Ukraine, most of the students will be self-funded. And this is the case across the board for most of the international students studying in the United States. Ukraine does not have any governmental scholarships. So the second best choice would be any scholarships provided or financial aid generally provided by a U.S. host institution, particularly the program that a student is applying to. And then for international affairs in particular, there are, of course, opportunities to apply to the Fulbright program in Ukraine that can support master's degree in a U.S. institution.
So I hope that answers your question, Maxim. And you have a question over there, Liz.
Yes, so 2 questions.
Yeah.
Great.
The first one is, do you recommend using services such as Common App in order to apply to numerous institutions and increase your chances getting enrolled? And the second question is, in general, what kind of merit do you have to have in order to get a merit-based scholarship?
Oh, I did not hear the question. So, Liz, if you can repeat it.
Sure. Yeah. No problem at all. So are you looking into the undergraduate program, I'm assuming? So the student here is looking into undergraduate programs. And the question is whether or not you recommend using Common App or Coalition App or any other services that allow you sending applications to several schools at the same time in order to maximize your opportunities and apply to a variety of different colleges. And the second question was a little bit more generic on the sort of merit. Okay, sorry, I think something just crashed back here.
It's okay.
On the technology side of the things. So I'm not sure if you were able to hear me, but essentially, the first question was for the undergraduate studies, if you recommend using Common Application or Coalition applications or other aggregates to maximize your options of applying to different colleges. And the second question was more generic one on what sorts of merit you're kind of expecting students to demonstrate to be eligible for a merit-based financial aid.
Okay, so for the undergraduate question, I don't know what that was, but for the undergraduate question, I would suggest doing the Common App. It makes it a lot easier on students when they are applying, really centralizes your applications and helps you track it a little bit. I graduated in my undergrad quite a bit some time ago, so I'm not super up to date on any new updates to the Common App, but from what I remember, it was a very easy way to just have all of my applications in one setting and not have to be tracking it. That being said, with graduate school is a lot more different because you have to apply specifically through each school's portal for each of their application portals. So that's why we recommend you having an Excel sheet or something to track it with, because unlike the Common App, unlike undergraduate degree, for a graduate degree, you're applying through various schools and various types of portals and various different questions. And then the second question, being merit. So it can, again, really be a mix of things that the school may take into account. So from my experience, a lot of schools put weight on your academic background. So if you have taken, have shown you have an aptitude for study, so a high GPA, you've taken very challenging courses, you've really branched out, that can be a component to your merit aid. If you volunteered in Peace Corps, that may be a contributor to merit aid. It's things like that that show kind of you are committed to this field, you are committed and interested in this field. Doesn't necessarily have to be that you've done academic background in it, but it could be that you volunteered for this organization for X number of years and you have led the committee in proposing a new way of answered that question. Liz?
Yeah, so we've got one more question here.
Great.
Hi, Briana. First of all, thank you a lot for this valuable information. And the question is specifically about the personal statement. Well, you've mentioned already that, of course, all of the other things are also important and are taken into account for applying. But I would like to ask you, how do you think, from the side of commission, like if a person take your package, like what are the main triggers maybe that come up to your mind that they say yes psychologically that they are going to read your package of documents when it comes to the personal statement? Because of course, as it's like a big flow of students, a lot of the packages are not just like checking it all.
Okay, I think I got the first part of the question. Is it asking what is it about an application that will first set you out apart from the big pile, correct?
Yeah, so this is generally the idea of the question, and then there is a specific question about what can there be put in the personal statement that can help you to motivate the member of the admission committee to really dig into your application, read it through, and be excited about you as an applicant.
Yeah, nope, that's a very common question for sure. So what makes an admissions person want to read your application? The first one that is a very easy one to follow is honestly just submitting everything. Make sure you've submitted everything that they've asked for, because a lot of students tend to either forget that they haven't submitted one of the recommendations, especially if you're submitting a recommendation from someone. For example, if you're applying to a US-based school and they ask for recommendations in English, if you've submitted a recommendation that isn't in English, obviously the admissions committee can't read it, and that already makes it so that they can take your application out of the pile for consideration, because you haven't followed the instructions. So that's a point that I'd like to make, that if you are submitting a recommendation by someone that doesn't speak English, it's okay, but have it translated by someone that is an official translator, so that the admissions committee can read it. So the first, again, to reiterate, is just following directions, submitting everything that you need to. That already will take you into the pile of consideration. Trust me, many students fail to do so, so they automatically get eliminated from having their application read. The second being, what can you put into it so that the admissions committee wants to read it? Once that you've submitted it and you've followed directions, you've submitted everything, they will read your application regardless. So there isn't a specific thing that you can say to make them more eager to read it. Well, I will say, at least for the personal statement or your essay, is one, doing the research on the program, so understanding kind of who works there, not who works there, excuse me, but the professors that you may be working with, the work that you may be doing. I know from my own experience, I spoke on, for one of the schools that the school that I ended up going to for graduate, I spoke on wanting to do research with one of the professors because he was doing research in the specific realm of terrorism that I was really interested in. So that already is showing the committee that I've done my research, and not only am I aware of the program, but I now know where I want to go within the program and where I'm headed moving forward. So you want to make sure you've done your research. They know their program inside out. They want to know you and what you bring to the table. So again, using their program to state, hey, I am a great candidate because I'm interested in this and I want to do this. this may not be the typical way of doing things, but I think this is a better way. And once I've graduated with the degree from this school, I will be able to do this in my professional career and be able to set this field apart and make it better. So again, they will read your application regardless, but they want to know you specifically, your story. And one last thing I can give of advice on this end is that if you're not coming from a traditional IR background and for a graduate degree in IR, don't feel that you can't apply. Many admissions committee like to hear a different perspective that you've had. It's all about how you connect it. So I know a student who did dance for X number of years. They graduated with a dance degree in undergrad, but wanted to go into international affairs because they were really interested in different cultures. And when they traveled with their dance company, they saw just different problems that they wanted to address. So it's about connecting the two. And it's connecting your story to this realm. So as long as you do that, I can assure you that the committee will really enjoy your essay. Oh, and avoiding cliches. Everyone has the Gandhi quote in their essay. Everyone, uses the typical "I want to change the world" quotes. Avoid those, I would say, because the committee is reading thousands of applications, and I can assure you they're getting thousands of essays that have that same quote. So I hope that helps.
Great, thank you very much. Not sure if there are any more questions. Yes, we have one more here.
Yeah, so it's a very simple and stupid question. So if the school requires TOEFL 100 score and, for example, GMAT 700, is any reason to apply with a score lower than this?
There are no stupid questions. I think I heard it correct. So if the school is requiring a certain score for a test, can you apply with a lower score from that, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. There's no stupid questions. So don't ever feel that it's a stupid question unless you don't ask it. That's a stupid question. Nope. When schools tell you that this is a score that they're looking for, that's the average score of the students that were admitted for the past year. That's not a requirement usually. Students are admitted with lower scores. Students are admitted with a higher score than that. So don't feel that because they're saying you need a 700 on that test, you can't apply if you had a 650 or 600. Again, they're looking at your application through different parts, not just your test scores. So that's just the average. That's not a required. What I will say that some schools require will be prerequisites sometimes. Those you should be taking, but even so, you can apply without having taken those prereqs and be able to take a summer class to fulfill the prerequisite. So short answer is nope, apply to the school if you feel that that this is a program for you. That's just an average that they're publishing.
Actually, thank you for the answer. Actually, there was not about the average. For example, if the school requires for the graduate student to have TOEFL 100 score and you have 90, so is any like a regulation inside school, maybe in bylaws, that they cannot admit the person which has lower than 100 TOEFL?
What score is this for?
So the question is now kind of narrowing down a little bit more to the language test scores requirements, because they're usually not averaged out. There's usually a minimum test score requirement. So as a matter of fact, the student is clarifying whether if a program has a strict requirement of a minimum 100 on TOEFL,
Right.
would it be something that the admission committee may be able to reconsider if the rest of the profile is, for example, outstanding, but TOEFL is, let's say, 90, not 100?
Right. Yes, they do. So if you have a lower score than the required 100, for example, the admissions committee will try to see your competency in another level. So they might look at your your personal statement, and see how well you write in English. They may also reach out and ask you to write another essay for them within their portal so that it's timed and you can't use a translator, to see whether you have the skills, even though you might not have done well on that test. So they will try to see other ways that you bring that language skill without necessarily having that high 100. But if it's required, I would really stress then that you spend some time studying and taking the test again so you feel more confident and to take the test and have that score in your application, so you're not worried about having to have such a that not having to give that personal statement another level of scrutiny, if that makes sense. But they will try to look at another way if you don't have the high specific score.
And in our experience, we've also seen that it's quite possible that if they still feel that you're a strong candidate, they might suggest that you enroll in the program, but you take a special language course while on the program, for example, through the first semester, or a summer language course, so that your language capacity is up to the one that they need for the program.
Exactly. I know some schools also, aside from the English language, if they will require another language proficiency, and if you're unable to meet that at the time of application, but your application was strong and you've been accepted, they will again require you to take a summer class and then take a test before the semester begins to show proficiency. That isn't necessarily the TOEFL score. So there are other ways.
Great, thank you so much.
No, thank you all for having me and asking these really good questions.
Yeah, goodbye. Thank you.
It doesn't look like
thank
we've got
you.
any more questions here, so yes, thank you so much for taking the time and doing the presentation for us. It was really a great experience.
Of course. I hope it was helpful and informative for you all. And again, if you need anything from me, feel free to email me. I'm always available to chat. More than happy to put on another one of these for you all, or something more specific if you'd like. I'm here really to be a resource for all prospective students. So feel free to reach out if you need anything.